Welcome everyone to the PJ's Cast. I'm your host Pierce, alongside of my good pal Schmitty. We have a very special guest today here, and it was kind of perfect timing with everything that's been happening with the Red Wings right now, with them hiring their head coach. We have Max Bultman of the Athletic. How's it been going, Max?
Really good, busy for sure, but really glad to be here with you guys today.
Very much so. Before we get to that, I want to ask how things been recently, and how is it going? I know you went to the draft combine. How is it going there? Because I'm pretty sure it was the first one since 2019. So how is it going there, interviewing all the players and all that stuff?
Yeah, it was good. I'd been to the combine before, obviously before the pandemic, so little maybe slight differences, but not too different. It was pretty familiar. It was pretty much picking up where you left off, and I like that event. I like having kind of the whole league in one place like that, and you can see some people that you haven't seen in a while, and for in a lot of cases, the first time I've talked to most of those prospects. Some, you meet. Certainly, I live in Detroit, so I meet the program kids, or at least a few of them each year. But there's a couple that I was meeting for the first time even there, and certainly a lot of the international guys you're meeting for the first time. So I think it's a great event. I really like going to the combine.
Who are some of your favorite players to interview or get to know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was really, I mean, I had already met him, but I'm really impressed by Rucker McGroarty. He's
Love the
really,
name.
yeah, well, he's a really mature kid, polished kid, but also fun kid. I think it's hard to strike that balance. Like it's hard to be, seem like you're an adult, but still like you're loose. It is, and it's impressive that he can do it. See, I liked Frank Nazar. When I talked to him about, I did like a piece that was kind of reading prospects, their scouting reports. I thought he did a great job with it. I liked, let's see, there was a lot of good ones. I'm trying to think. Rieger Lorenz was a good one. Um, those were some of the ones that were like real kind of highlight. Matt Savoy for sure. He was really charismatic, personable. But it's to think about yourself at 17, at 18, doing that level of interview and basically 30, in some cases 30, maybe even a couple more job interviews in like a week-long span is incomprehensible to me. So all of those kids blow me away just on principle. But those are the ones who I remember kind of walking away. Seamus Casey was another one that I remember walking away just thinking like, wow, that's an impressive kid.
Yeah, and you also mentioned up like you did that thing where you read them the scouting reports or whatever it was. What was some of the most interesting feedback you got off of that while reading them?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably nothing beyond what was in the article, But I thought, I liked the kids that were willing to push back because I wasn't just reading them the positive feedback that Corey had written about them. There was guys who it was in fact pretty critical on, and so I appreciated when guys like Frank Nazar said like, "Hey, I think his projection on me is a little low." I appreciated when Brad Lambert said, "I don't think I take nights off," and I appreciated when a couple of the other guys, Jeremy Langlois, really pushed back on Corey's report on him. I don't remember if it was about his skating or his defending or something, but I think it might have been his defending. But I just liked the guys who were willing to push back. I thought that was kind of the point, right? It would have been a shitty article if I just went in and said, here's some nice things someone said about you, and they said, okay, thank you very much. So that was the point, and I'm glad that the guys were willing to stand up for themselves and say, hey, I think I'm better than that. That was what we were hoping to do.
Gotcha. So kind of I guess on the topic of young players, I remember the last time we had you on, I think it was November or December. I can't quite remember. Either way, it feels like it's been forever with how long the season has felt. I remember we had the discussion of who was the better rookie for the Red Wings, and
Yeah.
like at the time it was Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider. They were kind of neck and neck, but really over the year Moritz Seider took over and obviously won the Calder, and deservingly so. One, I have to ask, did you have Moritz Seider at number one? And two, like, how was it watching him progress as a rookie? Because um, I just find like the way he got picked, like how he's developed playing in the AHL and then the SHL, and not only that, like just him as a character. Watching his interview at the or not the interview, like his speech at the awards was so cool, and I just feel like this is a guy the NHL can market on an original six team. So I just kind of want to ask like the progression of Moritz Seider in his game, and also like the human side of him, I guess.
Yeah, first of all, I did have him atop my ballot. I had both Red Wings guys on the ballot, but I had Sider at number one. And you're right. I mean, he was a super personable guy, and he did just keep getting better over the course of the year. That was one of the most impressive things about him to me was, you think about kind of that proverbial rookie wall, and it's inevitable because of how much these guys are playing. 82 games and in that short compressed. This was even pretty tight schedule, I think, especially the second half of the year. And to him, you didn't really notice it. I think a lot of the rookies in the league, you started to see like, okay, maybe they get through the 50 to 60 games that they're more used to playing, especially if they came from like Europe. Those are usually like 50, 52 game seasons. And Sider, it didn't seem to affect him at all. He was still playing some of his very best hockey at the end. He was playing a punishing brand of hockey, which makes that even more impressive. But to me, like the element of Sider's game that just continues to surprise me right into this year is his hands and his puck skills and the creativity, what he's willing to try and how well he's able to pull it off. That was supposed to be the question on him. If you think back to when he was drafted, it was, does he have the offensive upside to be more than kind of that shutdown two-way, steady guy? And the answer is very clearly yes. He can do some really impressive things, protecting the puck, and he can, at the blue line, the way he keeps the puck in, the way he can make a move and make a play off of it. All of that is so impressive to me. And in addition to some of the slick hands you see going through the neutral zone stuff that, I think this guy's a number one defenseman. I think he's, on his way to being potentially a top 10 defenseman in the NHL before too long.
Do you think he could be in the class of like a Cale Makar? Because I know we look at Cale Makar, he has all the flash in the world. He's probably the most skilled, like the purely skilled defenseman arguably we've ever had in the NHL, certainly since Bobby Orr. But like you look at Moritz Seider, it's kind of a different game. Like he doesn't necessarily have that flash, but he still has that strong two-way game, and obviously he's developing his offensive skills. So I wonder if you like see him in the class with potentially Cale Makar and guys like Adam Fox and even Quinn Hughes.
Well, in terms of being like, if I say I think he can be a top 10 defenseman, I think all those guys are also top 10 defensemen. I mean, Makar and Fox have won a Norris Trophy, which puts them in a different class right now, right? But like you think of like this whole grouping of young D, those two certainly in it. Quinn Hughes is in it. Miro Heiskanen's in it. I think Sider is absolutely in it. And by the way, I think Jake Sanderson is going to be in it before too long in Ottawa. I do think he's going to be in that group. And then it's just like, once there's being a contender for Norris trophies, and then there's having won one. And I think, Makar and Fox before the age of 24 have both now won one. Sider's got a few years. It's possible. But I think your ticket into that club is that trophy, right? And I can't give that ticket. The only people who I guess in the sense that I have a vote, I guess I maybe partly can, but I get one small share of being able to give that ticket. But that tier, that Norris Trophy winning tier, you need a Norris Trophy to be in it. But I do think he's going to start contending for them in the very near future.
I feel like Sider's gonna be on that like that McAvoy cost where it's like they could easily win a Norris of their defensive ability. It's just they don't put up 80 points a year, so they're just not gonna get the credit in some of the media's eyes like a Makar does for getting because like, Makar almost got 30 goals. That's impressive. But like,
yeah. Oh, it's very possible, but yeah, and I think McAvoy, he was on my ballot this year. I think he was fourth on my ballot this year, right? But like another guy who's on my ballot this year is Aaron Ekblad, and I think that was the story for some of the early years of his career. And this year, the points really came through, and so I'm not ruling out Charlie McAvoy or Aaron Ekblad or Moritz Seider winning a Norris Trophy in the next 5 to 10 years. But it's just I think you're right. I think at the end of the day. When you talk about the Norris at his best all-around defenseman, I think it needs to include both, but the offensive side does matter. And I think sometimes people maybe imply that points shouldn't be counted in that. They are for a good reason. That's really hard to do.
I think it's just a couple of years where like Brett Burns won the Norris when like he definitely didn't have good defensive analytics. It's just like that's where I start drawing the line. But like this last couple of years, we're starting to get into actual two-way defensemen who can play both ways. And like you said, like Fox and Makar and Sider proved his rookie year he can do that. Like the sky's the limit for him, honestly, I feel like at this point for his age.
Oh yeah, he's a super impressive player, and there's nothing at this point. There's nothing that I'm going to rule out for Moritz Seider. I've had my fill of being wrong underrating him, so I'm done now. He can do anything.
Love that.
I guess that can kind of help us segue into the next topic. I'll never ever like doubt Steve Eiserman. He knows exactly what he's doing. Like, and kind of into that next question, like, what do you know about Derek Lalone? Because I know very little of him other than I know he was a former assistant coach with the Tampa Bay Lightning. But do you know like much about his like personality and like what systems he'll employ and what he'll help with this team?
Well, we met him for the first time yesterday in Detroit. He had his opening press conference. I mean, the first thing that I think the top of line item is he really emphasized about himself was himself as a communicator and the way he tries to build relationships with players. I think that's super important. And really, if you go look at his background, he comes from a long time as a college assistant coach. He was a head coach in the USHL, a head coach in the AHL, a head coach in the ECHL. He's used to working with young players. And I think that those two things combined, the history of being able to build relationships and connect with young players and the track record that he's had also getting them to win adds up to a really important picture for the Red Wings, who, as you guys well know, are going to have a lot of young players coming through in the coming years. And so having a guy behind the bench who they feel is going to help get that message through, the vision through to the young players is key. In terms of what he actually talked about, how he wants to play, to me, it didn't sound that different to how, Jeff Blashill talked about the game and frankly, how most coaches talk about the game, right? I don't think many coaches are going to come out here and tell you, we want to play 10-9 games. We want to run and gun, right? Like he's been a part of the Tampa Bay Lightning teams that turned from a team that was unbelievably loaded with skill and talent and could beat you in all these highlight reel ways, but had to turn into a team that could also check with you. And I don't think it's an either or. I think what made Tampa great was they could do both and they knew when to do both. And the answer to when you need to be that tight checking team, that team that doesn't give you anything, is in the playoffs. And if you don't do it at all in the regular season, it's very hard to find it in the playoffs. So I do think that's going to be a foundation. He's going to want the Red Wings to be a tight checking team, a team that's hard to play against. That was the first thing that came out of his mouth when someone asked him what he wanted the identity to be. He said hard to play against. And so that's how, you take him at his word. And I think that was a similar vision for what Jeff Blashill had for them. And now you see if a new voice, maybe reinforces it, a new voice who's just won 2 Stanley Cups, that probably helps. And then you see kind of, he says he's a communicator and he builds with relationships. And that's the way he's going to try to do it.
For sure. Like I definitely like that he has I don't know if he's won at every level, but he's basically coached at every level you can coach at. And that's one thing that like we talk about when like a coaching candidate comes from outside of like what the normal 33 are that just keep getting rehired. But usually like they have like all these accolades and stuff. And it's nice to see Lalonde have all those and immediately have that ability to say, listen, we're not gonna play this high flying style. We want to teach these young players how to tight check, how to win a 2-1 game. Like I feel like that's the type of style he wants to at least ingrain in these young players going forward. Because like with Tampa, like Pierce and I talk about it all the time. They have this ability to just put on the gauntlet, and you're not going to score on them at some points.
Right. And to be clear, he didn't rule out any kinds of style, but he just made clear they're going to be able to do the latter. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think it is important. And I think, what's key is the Red Wings don't have the personnel right now to go score 7 goals a night anyway. So you can defend and you can always defend. And I think this was something that, again, came up under the last regime too. You got to do it consistently though. And so I think that's going to be his first task, is getting this team to defend consistently and consistently well. And if they do, they'll be in games. And how much can they improve? We'll see. But I think, you talked about, has he won everywhere? He hasn't won the championship everywhere, but he's consistently gotten his teams to be significantly better very quickly at every stop in the past.
And that's definitely something you got to take note of, because even if it's not immediate success, you just want to see growth with players. Like we talked about this with Luke Richardson with the Blackhawks. Like we're not expecting to be good next year, but if you could see development in a couple of the young players, that's really all you need right now. And especially with like a Detroit team that's got, like you said, they have all this budding young talent coming up the next 2 or 3 years, which kind of leads me into my next question, just because like the Red Wings, obviously the last couple of years have had a goaltending problem, I feel like. And obviously like it's kind of just a waiting game until Kosa's ready at this point. But Is the plan next year just to go in with Nedeljkovic and give him another shot, you think? Or is it they might bring in a 1B this offseason to maybe help with the tandem, or maybe make it a tandem back there this year with Alex Nedeljkovic?
Yeah, they'll need to get someone else in behind him. I don't, they're not going to obviously go in with just one goalie on the roster or anything, but I still expect he'll be the starter. And I guess if they were to go get like a Jack Campbell, like that would kind of probably be the only, assuming Darcy Kemper's going back to the Avalanche, that would really be the only guy in the market who I would say you'd maybe give the nod to over Nedeljkovic. Even like a Ville Husso, who had a great year, track record wise, I don't think he's dramatically ahead of Nedeljkovic or anything. So to me, the answer is going to be, it'll be Nedeljkovic with a backup, and you see if he can, because through the midway point of last year, he looked really good, and he lost it for a couple months stretch there. And you can argue, did they overwork him at times, and it led to that. And even during that stretch, he had a couple games where he got pulled and he went back in, and that's something you don't see very often. So to me, I think it's the right call to bet on Nedeljkovic. We'll see if there's any surprises waiting, but I think they should give Nedeljkovic a full season, a full look, 55 games or so. And what are you? Because if he can put up a 9-10, 9-15, I think you're really happy with a young goaltender who's shown he can do that.
For sure. I mean, I think we all forget the guy's still 26, 27. Like, he's a young goalie. Like, he's still got
He's still eligible for the Calder this year.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. What was he, a finalist for the Calder last year, and then he gets to be up for it this year? Oh, that's
and
great.
I think he got a 5th place vote, so he was on a ballot for 2 years in a row.
Love that. Love that. He's in his Matt Murray arc. Now he's going to go win back-to-back cups with the Red Wings and then get traded to Ottawa. Anyways, I get, maybe before we go in the draft, I just wanted to ask a quick question retaining to the roster real quick. So like, this is kind of like a two-parter, but Dylan Larkin obviously is a free agent at the end of this next season. And like, I saw him on Frank Saravalli's trade board. I don't think that happens unless Eisenman gets his socks blown off. I think what more is likely is they try to find a 2C this offseason to maybe help it, because I mean, down the middle, the Red Wings are a little thin. I'm just wondering if maybe there are a couple names that you might have in mind that they might look at this offseason to maybe get a guy behind Larkin, or they might just say, we might just run with Suter again at second line center next year. I don't know. I'm just curious.
Well, one of the guys who I would have said may have priced himself maybe more term-wise out of the Red Wings range with how good of a playoffs he had, and that's Andrew Kopp. I thought he was outstanding for the Rangers. Local kid, I think it would have been a real nice fit for him to come on, and especially, if he could. The Red Wings haven't done a long-term deal yet under Steve Yzerman. I think Dylan Larkin will be the first, and I think it will be soon. But that's a certain caliber of guy, right? And I don't see them giving. He's also only 25, to be 26 soon. I don't see them giving the like 6, 7, 8 year deals here in free agency personally. And if Andrew Kopp, who has every right to seek that after how good he just was and secure his financial future, if that's what he's looking for, then I have a harder time seeing it in Detroit than I would have a couple months ago. But I do think, if he is open to, that kind of 3, 4, 5 year term, maybe that gets more possible. And I think he's a natural fit. He can play second line center. He can bring some heaviness, some physicality to his game, as well as bringing offense. Another guy is Vincent Trocheck, though. The closer it gets to free agency, I kind of have a harder time seeing it. We'll see if he sticks around in Carolina, but especially, you kind of hear the noise around Pittsburgh, and is Evgeny Malkin really going to be back? If he's not, to me, Trocheck would be a real obvious fit for them. And we'll see what happens there. But another guy who I think can bring some good elements, some competitiveness to the center position. Like, he was a part of an excellent penalty kill in Carolina. That's an area the Red Wings need to get better next year. But if it's not one of those two guys, I don't think Ryan Strome makes a world of sense for the Red Wings. I guess you could say if you could get Malkin short, would that be interesting? But if he's not willing to do short in Pittsburgh, I don't know why he would be willing to do short in a rebuild in Detroit. So to me, it's just, if it's not Kopp and if it's not Trocheck, I'm not sure that I see that obvious answer for them, in which case, you're probably just going to continue to try to get by with Pius Suter, or hope that, Joe Veleno or Michael Rasmussen take that next step or something in the short term. That'd be my guess.
I was gonna say, maybe they go back to the well with Blackhawks centers and get Strome when he doesn't get qualified. The other Strome.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's not a bad idea, to be honest. I mean, especially, you know, they're willing to, they have seemed to be willing at this point to do anything on a short-term deal, right? They've made, you know, like a couple years ago, I'm sure you guys remember, they made the trade for Brendan Perlini and didn't work out. No harm done. You know, they give up Alec Regula, who I think has progressed pretty well since they traded him. But you know, they've proven that they're willing to take short-term bets on guys, as long as it's not, you know, a long-term or a crazy dollar amount that's going to burn them.
Oh yeah. Kopp was definitely a name I wasn't thinking of beforehand, though. If the terms right, though, you're 100% right. Kopp's,
but you know, like at this point, he's shown that he can be this guy on a good team. Like I have to think his market went way up, not just in terms of what he can get on an AAV, but I think there's going to be a team now who's willing to give him 5 or 6 years after what he just showed. Sure, it could be them.
They lose out on Kadri,
right? Or, you know, and Kadri's another one, but I think, you know, he just won, and
he's not going to want to go to
exactly. So yeah, no, it's tough times to be without a center, and it always is. And this is what I you know, talk to people about this all the time. Like you talk about like the draft, and everyone says, you know, you got to go best player available. Sometimes you just got to go most valuable player available. And when you look at how rare it is to find a top 6 center, you know, the Red Wings haven't used one of their top 10 picks on a center since Michael Rasmussen in 2019. It doesn't look like he's going to be a top 6 center, and they've been in this top 10 for 5-6 years now, and they've only gotten him at the center position out of it. Joe Veleno they got in the first round at 30, but that's not one of their top 10 premium picks, and he doesn't look like he's a first or second line center at this stage either. So to me, you're going to have to go draft a center. That's how you're going to answer this question long term. And each year you don't do it, you just add another. You know, it gets that much more important the next year. So that's the way you find your center ultimately. If you can find a short-term stopgap in free agency or a trade, that's great. But ultimately, I think you're going to have to draft one.
And that perfectly segues into the next question I have. What do you think they do at number 8? Well, I know it's impossible to see what Steve Yzerman does. He's the ultimate, like never let them know your next move. So do you think they go for center? Like the centers that I think could probably be there at number 8 are Frank Nazar and Matt Savoy. Do you even think they would like go for someone like Marco Kasper, because he kind of fits that Steve Yzerman bill where maybe there's not super high upside, but that's like pro guy, pretty much close to pro ready, but he could probably be like at least the worst, like a third line center or even like a second line center at best, and kind of play everywhere. And I just wonder what you think about that.
Yep, those are the 3 guys who I have circled for them. Obviously, if you do decide that, you know, you think Joakim Kemell or Jonathan Lekkerimäki are that much better, I don't have a problem with either of those 2 guys either. Even one of the defensemen, Mintyukov or Korchinski, if you really like one of them, I would have no issue. But those are the 3 guys who I've had circled for them. I like Kasper quite a bit. I'm among the people who think he maybe makes the most sense in terms of what they're lacking, but I really like Savoy too. I really like Nasar too. It's you know, they're all really good players. When I've done mocks for them, if all 3 are on the board, I've had them taking Kasper, but I could see any of those 3, and I could see some of those other names I said too. But to me, like Kasper is the one who checks seemingly every box, maybe except for the high end point total projection. But I think everyone's got some kind of question, and I think that's, you know, when you look at Kasper, he brings enough elements that give you the hope that he could still develop into that, you know, 40, 50 point center that's so valuable that you're looking for right now.
Oh, for sure. Especially playing that 2-way game also. Like I feel
that's what I mean. Yeah. Like he brings the whole
underrated
package. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like I don't know if this is a good comparable from the last couple of years, but like the way Marco Kasper's are talked about a lot kind of reminds me of Anton Lundell, where it's like he had that high floor going into the draft because he has all the tools ready to go. And like Pierce said, he's almost NHL ready. And like, but the offense wasn't there. And then Lundell as a rookie got like 60 points. So like if you're betting on the offense coming later and he's got everything else, that's probably a good bet sometimes.
Lundell had a little more pedigree of offense, like going into his draft year, he was a little more highly regarded, but I think it's not too hard to look around the league and find guys and say, okay, if he's this, is it valuable enough? You know, like Nazem Kadri until this year was mostly like kind of that 50 to 55 point center. If he's that, I think you're perfectly happy. You know, in Minnesota, like he's not quite as big as like a Joel Eriksson X, so that and I think he's a better skater, so that one might be tough. But you can, I'd have to sit down and go through. But I've done it in the past. I can almost pull up one of my old articles and see what I wrote down about it. But there are centers in the league who are true second line centers. Anthony Cirelli would be a good example of one who, yes, he's an elite defensive forward. He was on my Selke ballot this year. But he's a guy who I don't think has crazy offense. I don't think he's a guy who's ever had, I don't even know if he's had 50 points in the NHL. And I think he's a slam dunk number 2 center on a team that's won multiple cups, Sam Bennett is who Corey Prodman compared him to. I think that's another good one. Again, just had his career high. It was 49 points, and he was a second line center and the President's Trophy winner. So ultimately, that's a really valuable player. And especially at number 8, I know people want, the 60-point guy. And that's great if you can find it. If you think Savoy is that, if you think Nasar is that, I think Savoy in particular has a real chance to kind of be that kind of guy. But you got to be sure he's a center. And I think you're absolutely, to me, I would be sure Kasper's a center. Savoy to be more 50-50. There's questions with all these guys, but I think there's enough there. The two-way game, the physicality, the competitiveness, the speed, enough skill, enough vision, enough, kind of willingness to take the puck to the net, I should say. To see that play, that I would be willing to take that bet on him.
For sure. I know you mentioned like a couple names like Krasinski and like Kamel and whatnot. If there was like a name that they went completely off the board and God, who would you think that would be at 8? Because Yzerman does love going off the board sometimes, and he's usually right. So
honestly, I don't know how much what I think they would do versus what I think among that group. Minchikov really appeals to me when I watch him. He's not the kind of like polished defender that I think he needs to be. I did get a chance to sit down with him at the combine and he really impressed me. But he does 2 things that I think really just impressed me. He's got a clear instinct for when to just go and take the puck. He's got the skill to pull off some good moves. I think he's got good skating. And he's also physical. And that, to me, if you have that physicality, that projects into some ability to defend well, especially when you combine it with, okay, he's got good offensive instincts. That tells me he sees the play well. Can you just rein him in a little bit? And then maybe he could still be that kind of, number 2, number 3 defenseman that I think is really valuable. Especially if you get him at 8th overall, I think you're very happy. So that might be the guy, but I don't know if I'm just saying it because he was one of the most fun players I got to watch this year.
And you're talking about physicality on the back end. If you got 3 big dudes back there like
Minchikov,
right. Cider, and then you get Edvinsson coming up, like
right.
Holy smokes. That's just a large defensive core back there.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. He's like, if I can't have one Hedman, we'll just do Hedman by committee this time and get all 3 of them. I feel like there's not just a bad spot Detroit can go in with number 8. Number 8, I feel like it's a spot where, like, who knows what's going to happen even 3 picks in front of you. Like, Pierce and I were talking about this. We did a mock draft last night. Like, after pick 5, it's going to get crazy.
Where the craziness starts, I think, is pick 5 with Philadelphia because they can really go anyone there. That's what I'm looking forward to for the draft.
Yeah,
or if they even keep it at all.
I was going to say, like, I'm curious to see if, like, maybe a guy who was supposed to go top 5 maybe falls to 8 too. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe something like that happens because, I mean, we've seen, like, you talked about it previously, like, teams value centers at the draft. We've learned that in the past. Like, Barrett Hayton went 5th overall a couple years ago when he probably shouldn't have even went top 10, in my opinion. But, like, I genuinely think we're going to be in for some surprises on draft day that no one even expected to go in the top 10.
That's usually how it goes. I mean, it is as much as we all try, it is very, very hard to predict.
But that's what makes it so fun, though, and that's why I'm looking forward to being there at the draft to boo Gary Bettman. Also hear him say I have a trade to announce and hear like the oohs and ahs of like the players being picked. Because I remember even just watching the 2019 draft on TV when they picked Moritz Seider, like there's such a huge collective gasp in the stadium, and I don't think anyone was more surprised than Moritz Seider was. It was awesome.
Right.
Oh man. I just remember. And then like Kakaniemi the year before, the lady just like what? Me personally, I'm excited to go to Montreal and watch the whole stadium boo Ken Hughes when he picks Yuri Slafkovsky because like I've never seen a team put themselves in a position to mess up a number 1 pick so bad. Like I don't know what your thoughts are, Slafkovsky, Max, but like when McKenzie dropped that new rankings and stuff, I'm like, if they actually go 1 with Slafkovsky, they're getting booed out of the building. Like I hope they know that, at least in my opinion. Like if you're picking the number 1 pick at home, you should just there should be no second guesses. But
I don't know. It's tough to say. Like to me, they're both really good players, and I think that Slavkovsky has kind of this dynamic power element to his game that is really appealing. And I don't think anyone should boo if their team gets this guy. I think he's a really, really good player.
I'm just going off of what NHL fans do when they don't get their guy. And we've seen that before.
No, I get it. I mean, it certainly when you have the draft at home and you have the number one pick, it creates a whole other set of expectations, especially when there's, a homegrown Canadian kid on the board who's been the presumptive number one. So I do get that, but I think really any of that top three, even Cooley, I think might have the most pure dynamic skill in this class. So I don't know. I don't think Montreal can really mess up too bad, as much as it'd be a lot of sleepless nights because the stakes of the number one pick is high. They're going to get a really, really good player, and even if they do surprise you, I think it's going to be a franchise piece.
I hope so, because like that franchise needs it, and that's nothing against Slavkovsky. Like I see a lot of Rantanen in his game. It's really nice. It's just, man, you're putting a lot of pressure on that kid if you pick him over Wright at 1, especially in the hometown. That's just my opinion. Like it's
but you're putting a lot of pressure on Wright too when you pick him number 1, right? And he's been this presumptive guy. He's a Canadian kid. He's supposed to save this franchise, and that's the thing. There's no matter who Montreal picks, there's pressure because they're going to be playing in Montreal. That's true. And the pressure there is just a different animal, and there's only a few markets in the league that can match it. Vancouver, Toronto. So it's no matter who it is, they're going to feel pressure.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's true at the end of the day. But either way, I'm excited to see what happens, because the fact that it's even up for discussion of who's going 1 still right now makes it very interesting going into Thursday. That's for sure.
What's your hot take for the draft? What do you think? Like a player going higher, player dropping, whatever, or a trade, whatever that might be.
It's a good question. I'll say that there is a trade down within the top 5, which you very rarely see. That'll be my prediction.
Alrighty. You think Alex DeBrincat gets traded?
Yeah, I do. I don't know what or to who, but it seems like that's the way it's going to go for Chicago. Is it at the draft? I mean, I think it probably makes the most sense for it to be at the draft. Yeah. I'll say yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
I know, right? Just like should be fun.
We've almost like, at least to me, like I've kind of conditioned myself now. Like I've just accepted that they're going to trade him, which sucks. But I mean, if they get just a crazy package back for them, then whatever. I can't complain too much. Either way, I think the draft will be crazy. It's be fun that it's finally in person for the first time since 2019, and even though we won't get to interview in Montreal, we might even get to bump into you. So
yeah, I hope so. It'd be great to see you guys there.
All right, so thanks for coming on, Max. Hope you enjoy the next few days before Montreal. Happy Independence Day, and again, hopefully we bump into you somehow.
Thanks, guys. I hope so too. We'll hopefully they're making those hot dogs in Montreal. We can have one together.
Sounds like a plan. All right, take care.
Take care.